What inspires me daily?
Capitalism.
My proudest moment.
Right, so what's your name and what do you do?
So my name's Amani Simpson. I am a social entrepreneur, a youth activist, and a change maker.
Tell us about the first time you tried to start a business or start your own thing.
Oh, that's a good question. I was 17 or 18. The company was called Aviard Entertainment. It was all about just events and music, and I created it with a few of my friends and family members.
Was that the first thing you ever tried to kind of sell, or you tried to sell things in school or anything like that?
So I wasn't necessarily, was the first thing I sold. It depends how deep you want to go. So when I was 16, I was a drug dealer for a little bit. I was groomed into that. And so I guess my street skills came into play as I kind of moved into the legitimate business world. And I guess a lot of what I was doing was based off my experiences in college. I had a really amazing mentor called Fusion who just helped me to see the potential in myself. So after, a little bit of kind of coaching, I created Aviard Entertainment, and that was the start of the entrepreneur you see today.
So what did you want to be when you were a kid?
When I was a child, I actually wanted to be a policeman, funny enough. And I think as I started to kind of change my character and put on a mask, I think I just started to lose track of that. And I think when you don't have a direction in life, it's very easy for you to get drawn into things that aren't positive. So I should have kind of kept that up, I guess.
What do you think your younger self would say if they met you now or saw you now?
Raw. Probably they'll be like, "Oh my gosh, is this where life takes us?" And so I think a younger version of me, like a teenage me, would have been awe-inspired by what God's blessed me with.
Tell us your proudest moment to date as an entrepreneur.
It's got to be the film, right? Working with my brothers Javan, Wade, Purcell Ascot, Richard Catter, all these different people that we were working with to do the film, and going through all the ups and downs, and then bringing it out and reaching 1 million people in 4 days. And then I think going into schools off the back of that and meeting the young people that watched it and being just being a role model, a very visible role model for the young people when I go in there and do my assemblies and workshops.
Mention us what the name of the film is.
Sorry, the film is called Amani. It's Money. So it's Amani. It's on YouTube.
What would you say is your single strongest character trait?
I am very resourceful. Very resourceful. Put me anywhere on God's green earth and I'll make something happen. I think that's because of the lowest points that I've been to in life and having to just constantly use what's around me to survive and to get to where I am now.
What's the most money you've ever made or lost in a single day?
See, I used to be in property, so like sales and lettings. So I would say the most amount of money I made was probably $5,000. Most I've ever lost in a day. I started trading. I started trading and I didn't know what I was doing, and I kind of left myself in a trade instead of pulling it out very early, and I lost 1-4 in fact, it wasn't a day, but it felt like a day. It was like basically it was one trade and it just went and evaporated.
How did that feel?
Oh man, I'm still trying to recover. No, joking. To be honest, what it did do is it showed me that I wasn't ready for that. As much as trading is a very, very key skill to have, and there's a lot of success that you can have from it, you can't just rush into it. I think I jumped in on the basis that we were going to make hundreds of thousands of pounds or whatever the case may be, and there was never going to be any kind of down points. But what it has done is it's taught me a lesson to get myself clued up about what it is that I'm doing so that I can make long-term money and generational wealth, basically.
If we gave you £1 million tax-free today, what would you do with it?
I'd give it to someone who knew what to do with £1 million, because I don't necessarily know what to do with £1 million. So I'd go and sit down with people that have had money for a long time, and I'd get advice as to how I could leverage it and make 10 million.
Is capitalism evil or good?
I think everything has a bit of good and bad in it. I think if you look at what capitalism has done, to a certain extent, you can say it's been good to allow us to reach the heights that we've reached as society. But then at the same time, there's a massive gap, with the poorest in our world. So I would say that it's a yin and yang effect. I'd say that we definitely need it, but I think there's more that could be done to ensure that it benefits the many, not the few.
What would you say was your worst, most difficult customer or client you ever dealt with?
Jeez, definitely within the lettings business. The one that comes to mind, there was a few, but there was one that came to mind. It was a lady who I introduced the tenant to her, and basically the tenant hadn't necessarily passed all the checks and everything. And then we said, actually, let's cancel the deal. But because she was so hungry for the money, she went ahead with the deal. And then it turns out that these people just basically weren't who they said they were. And actually, I think there was another agent that got involved and changed the locks to her house. It was mad. But then I kept telling her, don't take any money from these people. Go there with the police the same day and essentially get the situation sorted out there and then. Don't take any money. But she was like, oh, well, I think I can make it work. And now 4 or 5 years later, these people are taking over her house and she can't get it back. And I learned very quickly how to qualify tenants and stop wasting people's time. I think at the beginning, I was probably a little bit more ambitious and just bring anyone to go and see a house. But then as I got older, so I'd probably say sorry for doing the initial introduction and not doing the due diligence. But then I think at the same time, I know that I also gave her good advice and she didn't follow it. So,
have you ever been tricked or conned by someone in business?
Yes. Again, like a lot of my business experiences have been through the lettings industry, because that's the longest time that I've had like an ongoing business service. So there was 2 landlords or 2 investors that I knew, and I built quite a good relationship with them. I trusted them and I introduced them to a deal that was happening for some land in the back of someone's house. And they, instead of trying to wait for me and keep me into the deal, tried to go around me and ended up buying the house or the land in an auction. But because they went around me, they didn't know all the different components, so ended up spending 50 grand on a piece of land that they couldn't build on. And so, that's what happens when you don't communicate.
Tell us about your lowest point as an entrepreneur.
Has probably been this year, because it's been a jump from being in like a consistent field that I've been in for 8 years and kind of learning the ropes of kind of like the social entrepreneur space and, going out and working with people and expecting that things are going to be a lot more forthcoming when you're on your job. But I guess learning that, you're going to go through, like, I guess the best analogy I can give you is the deeper the valley, the higher the mountain and the better the view. So that's what I've had to learn this year, that the valley is going to be deep in this first initial period of this journey, but at the end the mountain's going to be high and the view's going to be amazing and the impact's going to be great. So yeah.
Tell us about a time where you almost gave up and then carried on.
There's been loads of times. I'll give you 2 examples. First example is when I was doing the lettings, I basically started it from my bedroom. And so I used to make cold calls every single day to landlords that would always say, no, F off, get off my phone, not interested. And I used to have to make phone calls every single day, like 100, 150 phone calls a day to get one yes. And so there was many days where I just didn't want to do it, or after call 20, didn't want to keep pushing on. And so I just kept pushing. And then I think because I knew that there was a yes somewhere in these calls, that's what kind of helped me to get there. And the second example is with the film. So with our short film Amani, we didn't have any money to do it. So we were basically crowdfunding as we went along. And basically, long story short, we were 3 days out from the premiere, and there was a technical issue with the film for various different reasons. Loads of things were set back, and we had to cancel the premiere. 3 days before, we had maybe about 400 and something tickets, like reserved out of 560. We had the BBC and ITV coming down. We had big celebrities coming to film it or to be there, and we had to postpone it. And I think when I look back in that period of time, it was difficult to see past that moment because that's what I'd set my eyes on. But I remember calling Javan called me from Atlanta, And we just spoke about it and said, look, no, when the film comes out, it's going to be right, it's going to be perfect. And we kept pushing through. And then a few months later in January, we did a premiere to more people than we had originally. We actually had 700 people at the premiere, and we still had ITV and BBC down there. And when we released the film, it reached 1 million views in 4 days. And so, you know, as much as it was low at that point, I say the same thing again, the lower the valley, the higher the mountain, the better the view.
So what did it feel like when you were hitting like mad amounts of views and popping up on social media?
I've got two answers for that actually. The first answer is we expected it. And the reason I say we expected it is because Shiro's story did really, really well the year before and kind of blew up online. And obviously Javan was the face of that. So we expected it was going to do well. And I think when like me and Jay, like we spoke about and we prayed about it before the film went out, we said like, God, whatever you need to do with the film, just let it go and do what it needs to do, even if we get 10 views. But we knew it was going to be something that was going to be very impactful. But then I'd also say that it was very humbling to kind of wake up or to watch the film kind of just rise very, very quickly, very, very, very quickly. Like this is the power of the internet. And now we're sitting on 2.3 million views in the space of, 11 months.
What's your biggest insecurity?
I've always had acne on my face from when I was a teenager. So that's something, but I just kind of live with it. It's like my scar. It's like I used to be a bit conscious of my scar, like where I got stabbed. But as you get older, you just say, this is who you are, this is how you're made. And I don't really have many insecurities, I guess. I think when you go through some of the things that I've been through, you suddenly start to kind of shed all the masks. Like I had a lot of masks when I was younger, like kind of these metaphorical masks that I put on in order to kind of hide pain. And so now that I'm such a public figure, like I don't really kind of get caught up in like kind of feeling low in things that I know I have no control over.
What's the hardest thing about being an entrepreneur?
Having to create your own lane. Because when you're an entrepreneur, there's no blueprint. You can take little bits from other people's stories and journeys, but my vision is so unique that it means that I have to go and grab all of these different components and stay on this journey, even when you don't want to do it, even when no one else is on the road with you. Like I think the hardest thing is keeping that vision in mind, like, and remembering why you started, even when all the different elements come in to kind of stop you from doing that. But I know that in the small little wins and the small milestones that I've had in comparison to the big journey, like I'm definitely on the right path.
How much money do you make per year?
This year I've made less. I made about £20,000 less than I did the year before. For now it's about being at the stage that I'm at and just grinding it out. And I'm very proud of myself from starting with nothing. I've literally started from the bottom in my room in Wood Green to, where I am now, where I can say like every single money that I've earned has come from something that I've done, and it hasn't necessarily been kind of from like a normal 9 to 5. I haven't worked for anyone officially since I was 19, 20.
What's the biggest mistake that entrepreneurs make, and what advice would you give them?
They just have this kind of glazed idea that, this is sick and it's gonna work. And I think I wish that, actually my dad was an amazing, or is an amazing role model for me, because whenever I had an idea, in fact it was my dad and my family, whenever I had an idea, they would pressure test it. So I'd come in with the energy and be like, I'm gonna do this and it's gonna work, and we're gonna blow off, and in 2 years we're gonna be millionaires. And my dad would be like, that's great, but have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? And I think that's where we fall short. We get a lot of yes people around us a lot of the time, or our passion kind of gasses people up to the point where they come on a journey with us, and it's always gonna take longer than we think it's gonna take.
What inspires you to do what you do on a daily basis?
The fact that I know what it's like to kind of get to like the final stages of your life and feel full, feel like you've got so much more to give. Obviously being stabbed and experiencing what I experienced, I was very close to death, I believe. And in that moment, I just wanted to live. I just wanted to be impactful and leave a legacy. And so the fact that I've been given another chance at life where other people haven't, that's my responsibility now to, I guess, bring things to the world, and to basically, when God calls me, to make sure that I'm empty and I've done everything. So when I get to the gates, all I hear is well done, good and faithful servant. That's the aim.
Is poverty a choice?
Sometimes it is. I think I was watching a program the other day, like a dispatches program about children that are born into poverty, and I was having a discussion with my wife about it and saying that sometimes the parents have made certain choices that they are the first kind of their family line to create, to live in poverty. Maybe that's because they've fallen in love with a girl or a boy that has kind of dragged them into a particular space. But then also there's sometimes, let me finish that point, drag them into a particular space, and then their children are then grown into that, and then obviously it can then have a knock-on effect on generations after, even if they have come from wealth. And so I think that on the flip side of that, there's some people that are then born, like the children that I mentioned, that are then born into families that are automatically kind of in that poverty kind of bracket. But then I'd also say that poverty is a mindset as well, because there's many people in the world that have been in very, very hard situations and changed their mindset and the way that they handle things and the way that they move in order to elevate themselves out of those situations. So I think it is a difficult one. I definitely feel like more needs to be done to educate people about having less of a poverty mindset.
Did you take on debt to get started?
I didn't. Luckily for me, everything I've had has started from a standing position. You know, it hasn't ever kind of needed like an injection. Like the next projects I do will need it, to be fair, because I want to elevate it to a particular space. But the initial kind of creation of them, or like, you know, building up momentum, has been literally just from starting with a phone and, you know, the internet. And so very kind of like lean resources in order to get there.
If you became the leader of the world, what would your first action be?
I would probably sit down with all of the underdogs, all of the people that are overlooked by society, those that don't usually get heard, that are usually not represented in places of power, and ask them what their life is like and do like an audit on what it's like to be either poor or to be marginalized, or whatever the case may be. What are they dealing with? And then I would then ensure that if I was in complete and utter control, that I then brought the people that were in leadership to hear these people and then allow them initially to make changes for themselves. But if that didn't happen, then I'd force it in order to make that happen, basically.
Last curveball question. What's the most shameful thing you've done for money?
Is sold drugs when I was young, because I had a warped sense of what like kind of was valuable. And so I was groomed into that world by someone that I thought had my best interests at heart. So I call it shameful because I know that, you know, we were selling Class A drugs, and obviously that had an effect on the people. I wasn't helping them. I was kind of further destroying their lives by selling them, you know, these narcotics, basically. So I'm not proud of it when I look back. I know that it's part of my journey, but I know that that person that I was then and the things that I was up to at that time, it wasn't in a state of mind where I was completely, like, you know, understanding of what I was doing.
And last thing, what would you say to aspiring entrepreneurs just to encourage them more, you know, allow them to do their own thing?
If your mind can go there, your body can follow. And so you have to visualize where you want to go. You have to have goals. You have to set your kind of end result in the future, and then just allow God or the law of attraction, or the universe, whatever it is that you want to kind of just allow these things to manifest. For those that believe, I would say you have to pray like it's up to God and work like it's up to you, because it's all well and good, you know, putting in work, but you have to have an element of spiritual connection, because we have been put here to do something on purpose. And I mean that, you know, on this journey, it's not going to be easy. It's not going to be all roses. There's going to be days where you want to give up, days where family members promise you the world and then they let you down, or, you know, loads of different things are going to hit you. And you have to be resilient. You have to just keep being fluid like water. You have to just keep whatever comes in your way. You just have to find a way around it. And I'm still on my journey, so I can't sit here and pretend that I'm an expert. But what I do know, I always encourage people to learn, earn, return. You know, you have to make it out, you have to do what you need to do, earn your money, and then return and help other people. So I think this platform is amazing for like grabbing nuggets out of people's minds that have been doing it a little bit longer than some of the people that might be watching.